want to welcome everybody here. This is a very, very special day to have a very important guy, Jason Berry from the Village, to do this presentation. As I mentioned to all of you, we were lucky enough in the last month to pick up this document, which is signed by Abraham Lincoln. And you're in the Lemont Area Historical Building. It was done in 1861. It was a Civil War recruiting station. It was a Methodist church. And in 1970, the Methodists bought a new church in Lemont, and they decided to sell it to AT&T, and AT&T was going to destroy the building. And that's when the Lemont Area Historical Society was formed in 1970. So, you ready? Okay, without further ado, let's let Jason Berry start. Again, thank you all. And if any of you have not been downstairs, we have a museum downstairs. I'd be happy to give you all a tour afterwards. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for coming out this afternoon to learn more about Route 66 in Lemont. I'm sure everybody here has some great memories, whether it's hopping in a Pontiac and going out to California, or just traveling with mom and dad down to St. Louis, whatever it might be. 66 holds a special place for a lot of us. And we were really excited to get to be a part of its centennial year, 2026, in a special way that we'll explore in a little bit. For most of these years, we didn't know that Lemont was on Route 66. We knew it went out on I-55, went through Romeoville, and me and my friend Linda there at the Village were always trying to find a way to make Lemont 66. And thankfully, a map surfaces on eBay, and we're able to prove it. So when Route 66 was started in 1926, it indeed went down Lemont. So here's its original route. I will zoom around and throw up some images. So this is that map. I put it on its side so you could sort of see it a little bit better. But you start in Chicago, and then you head through the city to 79th Street, to Archer, and into Lemont. And we'll follow that route, if you will. So hopefully I'm not making anybody too dizzy, but this map starts here at Michigan and Roosevelt, so not far from the Field Museum and Grant Park. If you're familiar with the route today, the route of a year ago, it started in front of the Art Institute at Jackson and Michigan. They recently moved the start to Navy Pier, so that the route now goes from pier to pier, from Navy Pier to Santa Monica Pier. But if you're familiar with Chicago, you would have started heading south down Michigan Avenue. You would have passed through Bronzeville, so I was playing a bunch of blues for us earlier. When you get near Hyde Park, Washington Heights here, you would hit Garfield Boulevard and start heading west down Garfield Boulevard, head past Sherman Park, and then you get to Western Avenue, Gage Park, where this is Gage Park High School right here, and you would start heading south on Western Avenue, past Marquette Park, an important area, important neighborhood for the Lithuanian community here in Lemont and elsewhere. Maria High School is over there, Holy Cross Hospital. So you'd pass not far from Marquette Park. And at 79th Street, where St. Rita is now, it was originally at 63rd Street, but where St. Rita is now, you would head west again and head out of the city, pass through Burbank, pass through Bridgeview and all the like, go through Justice, pass through the forest preserves, and finally make it to Lemont. So as you're traveling from the city to LA, this is your first stop in Lemont. You would end up passing by St. James at Sagbridge. So that's been here since the 1850s. Even the parish is even a little bit earlier. Famously, this Irish Catholic parish, dug by Irish immigrants, built by Irish immigrants who came here to dig the I&M Canal. So this is one of the most historic buildings in Lemont and would have been your introduction to Lemont as you're traveling on 66. You head a little bit west and you'll have to cross over the Calsag Channel. At the time, the Calsag didn't have quite the width it used to have. It was only about 60 feet wide. Lemont's the confluence of these three historic channels. So in the foreground is the Cal Sag kind of crossing there. It meets the Sanitary and Ship Canal on the far end, and then right in the middle, the historic I&M Canal is bisecting the Cal Sag channel. So you would have went over this little baby Cal Sag on your way into Sag Bridge, which is a part of Lemont, Lemont Township that's no longer there, but you would have crossed there at about where Archer meets Maine. The area at that time was mostly farmland. You could have met up with Henry Hermes. His farm was 80 acres. He arrives in 1878. And so the landscape looked pretty much like it did here with the forest preserves, but everything you see to the south, equestrian and all the like, those homes would have been Hermes' farm. So you'd hang a right at Main Street, and you keep heading down. You would have passed Cog Hill in 1926. You would have passed it under construction. That's Main Street at Parker. And so here's a little photo I grabbed, or an illustration I grabbed from the Chicago Tribune. So Cog Hill was a big deal that this was coming to 119th and Archer. And so here's an illustration of its clubhouse. Still looks very much the same today. And this was an advertisement from 1926 for Twilight Golf, 75 cents. My Uncle Pete's wearing a Cog Hill. What do you pay these days, right? Very similar, yeah. I love the line, though. We have no members, this is your club. And I think that's something that's really unique about Lemont and the golf in Lemont, is it's always been public golf. And I think that's something really special about this neck of the woods. You'd pass by what's now where Mount Assisi was at, where the Sylvanian Center is at, and you'd come here. It wasn't yet Franciscan Village. The Franciscan sisters weren't living here yet, but it was Edwin Walker's mansion. Walker is a really important figure in Lemont's history and in Chicago's history, indeed. So he immigrated from England, lived here in Lemont, and quarried stone. He owned stone quarries in Lemont. His quarries quarried some of the most famous stone in Chicago. It's the rock that ends up in the water tower, the historic water tower in Chicago. So that stone came out of these quarries that we visit today. And the man that owned the quarries, one of the men that owned the quarries, was Edwin Walker. And this building stood for some time until it was later damaged by a tornado and needed to be torn down. But you would pass by, so you would see Edwin Walker's estate. Think, wow, that's a nice looking place. And you know you arrived in Lemont fully when you would finally see Lemont Township up there on Porter. The high school dates back to about 1906. It was at Central School, but it builds this building in 1925. So some folks here may remember it. It also stood for some time until it too was destroyed by a tornado. But this would have been your announcement that now you're here in Lemont with this fancy brand new high school built in 1925. And I put a picture of their football team because if you can see the bottom on the football, it's from 1926. So these are the boys that would have been playing football as you cruised by in your Model T or whatever it was you were driving in 26. Leaping forward, you would have passed what was known as the Illinois Pure Aluminum Company. This was one of Lemont's major industries. It was founded by George Walker, so the son of Edwin Walker, and they made aluminum ware. They debuted their wares at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. We have examples of it downstairs in our museum. And their slogan was, "The ware that wears." You could kind of see that a little bit there. So they're a significant industry in Lemont for some time. They later built this impressive building. It fell on disrepair. It's no longer there, but would have stood at the corner of, if you know Lemont geography, Main Street and Holmes. And if you don't about right there. So we're getting closer to downtown. You would have passed Village Hall. This is where I work. I was joking with Steve, that's not where you'll find me, but it is where I work. I work for the Village, and you know, this building obviously has not changed much at all. Originally it had a bell tower at the top, so that would have signaled the volunteer fire department, who would have ran in, and there's a door here on the left side of the building. That's where the hose would have been kept, and they would have ran out. What's neat about this photo too, in the far edge, you can see a little bit of a gas station there. It's a little bit out of focus, but that was a Sinclair station. So now, you know, Lemont was a canal town, and then it became a railroad town, and now it's becoming an automobile town, and you're starting to see things like Sinclair stations pop up. And so just a little bit, that was then, this is now. You can see again, Village Hall hasn't really changed much at all. It's kept its historic appearance. It even has a little false door there to let you know where the fire department used to reside. Again, in the 1920s, it's the era of good roads, and people are passionate about paving America. And so the Historical Society has a bunch of photos of paving projects in Lemont. This is on Main Street looking west near Stevens Street. The building under construction there becomes the Budnick Building. If you're from Lemont, you know the Budnick Building. If not, stay tuned, it's coming up. You can see him doing track work. That's for the Chicago and Joliet Electric. So this was a place where you could also hop on the electric and travel from Chicago to Joliet if you didn't yet own a vehicle and couldn't drive. So there's the Budnick Building under construction. And again, some more photos of the era. This is from 1926. So as the road's coming through, Lemont's making improvements along the way for those visitors. And I mentioned the Budnick Building, so there it is. That's Main Street and Stevens Street, right in downtown. And so this building opens in January 1927. So pretty soon after the route, this building would have been opened. Here it is back in the day. You can see the streetcar tracks as well, running down Main Street, and Village Hall in the back with its bell tower. And Budnick as it looks today. It hasn't changed much. Indeed, we'll find over these next few images, Lemont hasn't changed much, which is something that people love when they do come through town, and especially now we hope people that are interested in Route 66 are coming to celebrate that 1926 anniversary. They get to kind of discover our community for the first time if they've, you know, been past it. And so some other views. Almost all of these photos as well are taken from the Lemont Images of America book. That's available here at the Historical Society. I co-authored the book with my buddy Kevin Barron, who's sitting back there. So that's, if you haven't got the book yet and you love the images you see, take one home with you. Funny enough, I've said before, it doesn't mention Route 66 at all in this book. We didn't know, it came out in 2023. We didn't know at the time that Route 66 was in Lemont. So
it'll be in the next book.
It'll be in the next book. That's what I was looking to see if we're. So bird's eye view of Main Street. In the background there is St. Pat's School and St. Patrick's Catholic Church. And down to street view, again, that bird's eye view. Missing a couple buildings, but for the most part, it retains the feel that you saw in that older image. And then we'll quickly swivel around to the other side of Main Street. So this is Main Street looking east. There's some very recognizable buildings there. If you've been through downtown Lemont, and if not, our famous hamburgers at Nick's Tavern and Martellin's Bridal on the other side. So yeah, this view still retains a lot of its authentic feel. So as you continue on, at about where the metro station is today, the Lemont Depot, you would start to head up State Street. So Route 66 is about to make a turn and leave downtown. This depot was built in 1858. It's the oldest active masonry depot in the entire metro system. It's been here for a long, long time. Famously, Abraham Lincoln's presidential train after his assassination traveled through Lemont. And as many of you heard, we have a significant connection to Lincoln now in the Historical Society's archives. So if you haven't seen it yet, up there in that frame is a document that is signed by Lincoln for a resident of Lemont, and it was recently acquired by the Historical Society from the Ballard family. So make sure you take a look at that. So Lincoln traveled here after he passed away, and now today we're excited to have this Lincoln artifact at the Historical Society. So here we'll take a turn and start our journey up State Street, getting closer to leaving Lemont. You would have passed a car dealership right there. D&M Garage and Sales. They were a Dodge Brothers dealership. So that's right there on Main Street. Legion Park is the sort of woody area behind it there. So it's right at where Main and New kind of go. It was originally stables for a Wagoneer, and then it later becomes a garage. So again, Route 66, much of the story is about how as technology changes in transportation, you find reuses for some of these older historic buildings. And because we love this, so that was Dillman and McAdam. The McAdams family is still in Lemont. But the cost for a Dodge, this is from 1925. So you could head downtown Lemont and pick up a special. So they're already having packages, right? You know, they're already upselling you. The 5-passenger coach would have cost you $1,290. Some of the special equipment, you get 2 bumpers, a motor meter, which is a little dash on to tell you how hot it is, 5 balloon tires, so you get, this sounds like buying a car today, right, where you have to pay for the spare. Automatic windshield wipers, step plates, cowl lights, and the like. So I was happy to find that in one of an older Lemont newspaper. And then as your Dodge begins its journey up State Street, you'd see all the steeples of Lemont, really, but you'd specifically pass St. Alphonsus Church. Seen here, this is their second church. The first one was a wood frame church. Later they built this masonry church in 1920. So hasn't changed much at all. On your way out of town, you could get a haircut. The little building in blue on the left, if you're familiar with Lemont, you're from Lemont, you've probably driven past it a million times. First, you didn't know you were on Route 66, and second, you may not have known that you could have got a haircut there. But that was Art's Barbershop, and right next to it was an old grocery store called Singer Hill, and so you could stop for supplies, get your hair done, and then head back out on historic Route 66. Again, much of the landscape was farm. This is obviously now a shopping plaza. Pete's Market is there. It was Champagne's for many people. But before that, it was the Hischer Farm. And so here's a photo of Mr. Hischer. This, I think, made it into the book because we just, who doesn't like a picture of an old Danish guy with goats and sheep? So. But this is what the landscape of Lemont would have looked like, especially outside of town. So this would have been south of Pfeiffer, all farms at that point again. So you're driving through a rural landscape. If you didn't stop at Sinclair and downtown, Fred Meyer could help you out. This is at the corner of State Street and 127th Street. These early gas stations really also functioned as the first convenience stores. So you could see what would have been a convenience store behind him. So you could stop for Sinclair Gas and get some refreshments. You see Oak Grove there. It's also was known as Myers Grove, and you could see in the back was a picnic area. So you could have made a day of it. You could have maybe taken 66 from Chicago and just gone out to Fred Meyer's place, and he would sell you some, oh yeah, I love props. He'd sell you a Coke, whatever, thanks Kevin. People love crime. So unfortunately, Mr. Meyer was, in Lemont was held up at one point with sawed-off shotguns, says. They took $17 and dropped them off in Lockport. They were probably headed to Joliet. What am I kidding? Another, if you weren't going to picnic, another big deal was the Tottle Grove dance hall. In 1926 is Prohibition, and as most of you know, these towns were pretty wide open. So when they served refreshments, it wasn't always just a bottle of pop. Tottle Grove was very popular. The building is still there today. And a lot of people wonder, like, what the heck was that thing? Because it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I'll show you in a second. But they held regular dances. This one is not on Route 66. They're on Route 4A, which I'm sure my buddy Greg could talk about later. And that's part of the discovery of Route 66 today. So yeah, Tottle Grove was a very popular place. It just recently got rehabbed into a church. But it looks almost exactly like a dance hall. So I haven't been there yet, but they might be doing some dancing. I don't know. And then finally, you hit Archer Avenue, you turn right, and now you're headed into Lockport. So that's the end of this part of the story. That is Route 66 in Lemont in a nutshell, the things you would have seen, the proof that we were there. Are there any questions? You don't have to. No markers survive, no. Obviously, we're getting markers now. So that story for Lemont is, it really happened this year. We found, the map was found. We started working with the Heritage Corridor Destinations, the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We were introduced to the Illinois Route 66 Scenic Byway. The Byway is the organization entrusted with the brown signs that you see marking 66 in Illinois. And with the map as proof, we became a paid member of the Byway and got our first signs. And if people weren't able to see this, and so we'll have this somewhere in Lemont letting people know that we are on now this Route 66 Byway. So it's really official. Hey! As I've already said a couple times, I got to give thanks to my colleague Linda back there. I started in Lemont working for the Village in 2017, and I think ever since then, she was like, Jason, we have to be on 66. We have to be on 66. So she was just really tireless in trying to find this opportunity for us. So I'm really, this is as much for her as it is for the Village, in my opinion.
Let's let Linda stand up and tell her her last name.
My last name is Mama.
Yeah, so I was asked why it changed. and we'll probably go into this in a little bit more detail, but the brief story is in 1925, the state of Illinois had already paved a route to St. Louis called SBI 4, State Bond Issue 4. And when the federal government announced numbered highway routes in 1926, Illinois and Chicagoans, being who they are, were going to claim that they would be the first to pave Route 66. So what was already a paved road becomes Route 66 as the route continued to develop. So I have one more maybe. I'm going to try to, so you could see, there we go. So if people aren't familiar, the red line's the established route today that you would take. So you would start now at Navy Pier at the Art Institute, travel out on Jackson to Ogden. In the early map, Ogden didn't yet connect to Jackson, so you would have taken Roosevelt Road to Ogden and then traveled out. So, Lemont's an established community. Sorry for all my little name places there. But so as they were laying pavement west of us, Lemont got to be part of Route 66. I don't think it was meant to be permanently a part of Route 66. But I say Lemont, but also Lockport as well, because it continues into Lockport, and for parts of Joliet that for some time, like Collins Street and the prison, for some time people didn't believe were actually on Route 66. We can now say they were, and that's important for us. Yeah.
Tying on what you were saying about the state bond issuing idea, the original something like 45 or 47 state routes in Illinois are numbered the way that they are because that was the order they were approved to be paid by the state. So the original 4 and 4A designation instead of 171 shows the significance of how that road was one of the earliest paved routes in the area.
We're number 4.
If you grew up in there, in this area, you know Archer, it was always called 4A. And that's how it was marked. And Harlem Avenue was another, it was like 4B. So Harlem Avenue became 43. And 4A stayed that way and became 171.
Yep.
But 4A, I think, started at State and Archer,
Oh, yeah.
went down into the SAG, where 4 came through town. 4A alternate went for that little instead.
Yeah. And I think one of the things he said mentioned how like Archer starts in the city near State Street. And so I am surprised that they didn't just use Archer all the way through, but I am grateful that they took the route that they did and came through Lemont. All right, so we have a second part to this presentation today. We're here in part thanks to the Joliet Arsenal Development Authority, or JADA. JADA plays a massive role in the economic development efforts happening in Will County, and as part of this centennial celebration, they produced a video to sort of celebrate Route 66, as well as highlight a lot of the good work that they've done. So their executive director is in the building. Rick, do you want to introduce the film at all?
Sure.
So Rick Kwasniewski, former mayor of Lemont, and
well, it's great to be in Lemont doing this. So the Joliet Arsenal Development Authority basically redeveloped the former Joliet Arsenal into the Medallion Tallgrass Prairie, Abraham Lincoln Cemetery, and a huge intermodal rail facility that basically recreated the jobs that were lost at the former Joliet Arsenal. So one of the things that we decided to do during the course of this 100th anniversary of Route 66, because the Arsenal was on Route 66, is produce a video that basically highlights communities from Lemont all the way through Braidwood, and the historic nature of Route 66, some of the things that were there, and quite frankly, a lot of the things that are still available to do. So the object of us doing this roadshow, and this is the second one we've done, first one we did at the Roxy Theater in downtown Lockport, and we're doing it in each community all the way down to Braidwood. But the idea is so that all of you get an opportunity to see what's available in these other towns that are very near and close by, that you could easily go and visit. So, you know, from Lemont all the way down to Braidwood, we're kind of marketing each community to see exactly what's available and what's to do, and how you can relate it to Route 66. And with me today, and we're going to be on the panel, is Art Holtz, who is the former commander's representative at the Joliet Arsenal. So he'll be able to answer a lot of questions about the history of the arsenal and some of the redevelopment efforts. And also Greg Peerbold, who runs and is the CEO of the Joliet Area Historical Society, or Historical Museum, and has a number of locations that they actually operate and can talk about as well. So we're excited. It's about a 35-minute video, but it's pretty entertaining throughout, and we hope you like it, and then we'll be able to answer some questions for everybody afterwards. Thank you.
For 100 years, people have been getting their kicks on Route 66. This legendary highway, once stretching from Chicago to Los Angeles, still draws travelers from around the world, chasing the spirit of the American road trip. And nowhere is that story more alive than in Will County, home to the first 100 miles. Here, history isn't just remembered, it's still part of the journey. When Route 66 opened in 1926, America was roaring into the automobile age. Illinois was the first fully paved stretch in the country. Back then, Will County was a patchwork of farming towns like Manhattan. Route 66 carried new economic opportunities as it linked small towns to one another and to larger cities like Joliet. At the time, Joliet was the county's bustling hub. Route 66 wound down Chicago Street past the Joliet Library, a historic limestone building designed by renowned architect Daniel H. Burnham, and the impressive new Rialto Square Theater, opened in May of 1926 and still dazzling audiences today. The first alignment of the Mother Road passed through canal towns like Lemont and Lockport, communities built on the success of the Illinois and Michigan Canal. In Lemont, it passed in front of the Budnick Building, completed in 1927. Travelers might have pulled into Huster's garage for service, or slipped into Tom's Place, a Prohibition-era tavern that's still owned by the same family. In Lockport, Route 66 ran along State Street, passing the historic Gaylord Building, once a canal warehouse. Built in 1838, it's now home to art, dining, and the I&M Canal Museum. Visitors can walk from the Gaylord Building through Lincoln's Landing along the canal to another historic landmark, the Norton Building, once a canal trade hub. It's now the Illinois State Museum, Lockport Gallery. Nearby, Heritage Village showcases restored Will County buildings, including a Simerton train depot. Lockport takes its name from the first lock on the I&M Canal, an engineering marvel still visible today. Farther south, in Chenahan, visitors can explore another preserved canal lock, walk trails, and stand at the meeting point of 3 rivers. In 1928, Route 66 shifted to run through Romeoville, bypassing Lockport and Lemont. The route now passed White Fence Farm, a 1920s horse farm stopover that became a Route 66 institution. The Hastert family has been running it since 1957, and today visitors still come for their fried chicken, antiques, and alpacas. Romeoville has been a part of the Route 66 legacy since 1939. Travelers came to Romeo Beach until it closed in 1973. but there's still plenty of history to see today. The Fitzpatrick House, across from Lewis University, or the Beller Museum of Classic Cars, and Isle a la Cache Museum of Cultural and Natural History. Welco Corners, a well-known full-service truck stop for decades that even offered haircuts, marked a junction point in current-day Bolingbrook for the 1940s realignment that sent Route 66 through Plainfield. Many gas stations were built along this new route to accommodate the increased traffic, and Plainfield residents even rented rooms to travelers. Joliet was now on alternate Route 66. But today's road trip may call for a stop-off at the Route 66 Welcome Center inside the Joliet Area Historical Museum. Pit stops for food and fuel have always been part of the fun of a Route 66 road trip. Joliet is home to the oldest continuously operating gas station on the entire Mother Road, owned by the Lambert family. And in nearby Crest Hill, Merichka's has been family-owned and operated since 1933, and they're still serving good eats like their famous poor boy sandwich. World War II brought change to Will County. The U.S. Navy set up shipbuilding in Rockdale to support the war effort. And Route 66 expanded to 4 lanes through Elwood to support the transport of munitions coming from the Joliet Arsenal. Today, that land has been transformed into the Medewin National Tallgrass Prairie and the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery, places of remembrance and renewal. After the war, prosperity brought the golden age of the family road trip. Songs like Get Your Kicks on Route 66 played on car radios, and businesses like gas stations, motels, and roadside eateries flourished. When Eisenhower signed the Interstate Highway Act in 1954, it paved the way for I-55 to eventually replace Route 66. But adventure seekers continued along the old route, and businesses like Dairy Delight transformed to attract them. In 1965, owners bought a 28-foot muffler man named the Gemini Giant, who still greets travelers passing through Wilmington today. In 1975, Old Chicago, the world's first indoor amusement park, opened in Bolingbrook, where I-55 intersected with I-53 or historic Route 66. Although Route 66 signs began disappearing and the road was decommissioned in Illinois in 1977, the public wouldn't let it die. In 1985, the Polka Dot Drive-In opened in Braidwood, celebrating Route 66's nostalgia with 1950s charm. Visitors can still drive in today for burgers, jukeboxes, and photo ops with Elvis, Marilyn, and the Blues Brothers, fittingly filmed up the road at the old Joliet Prison. Route 66 history in Illinois is preserved thanks to local efforts and the Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program, established by Congress in 1999. Today, towns along the Heritage Corridor are keeping the spirit of Route 66 alive. There's so much to explore throughout Will County. As Route 66 marks its centennial, rediscover the gems along the first 100 miles and experience the fun and nostalgia of the great American road trip once more.
Time travel on Illinois' historic Route 66 at the Joliet Area Historical Museum and Sites. Start at the museum's Route 66 Welcome Center. Then, dig into a variety of exhibits the whole family will enjoy. Experience the City of Stone and Steel and tour the old Joliet Prison. Made famous by the Blues Brothers, if you dare. Step into a 1950s corner store and home to Slovenian immigrants, now a museum. Or visit the Joliet Railroad Museum, one of the top train watching spots in the area. And stop by the restored guardhouse of the former Joliet Arsenal. Then, cruise to Wilmington to see the Gemini Giant. And take a mini one home. Plan your Route 66 adventure today.
from Chicago along historic Route 66, a forgotten chapter of American history comes to life in a new exhibit about the Joliet Arsenal at the Joliet Area Historical Museum. Uncover the story of what was once the world's largest producer of munitions, from World War II to Vietnam. It's an explosive story of TNT and tenacity that shaped the outcome of wars and beyond. Learn how the redevelopment is serving the public in new ways. Then, experience it for yourself at Medewin National Tallgrass Prairie, where you can hike the trails and see birds, bison, and a bunker. Then, visit Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery, honoring those who served. And end your trip at the restored Arsenal Guardhouse, where it all began.
"60 miles from Chicago, near Joliet, Illinois. The first national tallgrass prairie. The largest inland port in North America. And one of the nation's largest veteran cemeteries harmoniously coexist on 23,000 acres of land that during World War II was the largest producer of munitions in the world, the Joliet Arsenal.
The Arsenal really kept our troops safe and won wars, and it was part of a defense effort, military effort we can be proud of. We can take similar pride in what's happened to that Arsenal land ever since.
This is the story of the Joliet Arsenal redevelopment, from swords to plowshares.
The Joliet Arsenal, as it's commonly referred to, began as a concept with the Ordnance Department back in the late 1930s. Hostilities were rising in Europe, and America was producing munitions and explosives and supplying to other nations around the world.
We must increase production facilities for everything needed for the Army and Navy for national defense.
The growing threat of fascism in Europe and the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor led the United States to declare war on December 8, 1941. 77 military installations were built to support the war effort. The location for ammunition production facilities, like the Joliet Arsenal, had to meet the Army's criteria.
It had to be at least 200 miles inland from any border to protect it from aerial bombing. It needed to be near a large available labor pool. There was a demand for large volumes of water for the TNT production process. That site had access to the Kankakee and the Des Plaines rivers. 3 significant railroads served that property. Major state highways were the avenues to transport in and out.
And wide expanses of relatively flat land would allow for ease of construction.
Prior to the Arsenal, it was all privately held land, predominantly farms. The Army mapped out 36,000 acres that they wanted to purchase. That involved 450 different properties and owners.
Farms were acquired, and construction moved quickly, beginning in the fall of 1940 with lines going into production even before building was completed.
The employment numbers at the Joliet Arsenal during World War II reached a high of over 21,000 people. Now, that included people not only doing the production of munitions and explosives, but also construction people that were still working.
Women, initially hired only in administrative positions, soon took their place on the production lines as more and more men went off to fight. The Joliet Arsenal was actually 2 plants located adjacent to one another.
The West Side unit, called the Kankakee Ordnance Works, its mission was to produce high explosives and the constituent chemicals that went into it. Those explosives would include primarily TNT.
After the TNT primarily was manufactured on the west side, put on rail cars, and then moved across the Iron Bridge to the east side so it could be incorporated into the assembly of munitions.
The east side plant, very different. It was a big production line where you'd start at one end with components and at the other end you'd have a finished product. Primarily aerial bombs and artillery shells.
Output was high,
over 1 billion pounds of explosives and over 700 million pounds of bombs and shells in World War II alone.
The Joliet Arsenal was the largest TNT production facility in the world at the time. After the war, manufacturing ceased. Portions of the plant were leased, and the remaining production facilities were placed in standby status. The plant was reactivated during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, but soon after the Vietnam War ended, it was decommissioned and maintained in caretaker status. In 1993, the Army declared the 23,500-acre plant property excess.
When it finally shut down, there was questions of what are we going to do with this?
We'd faced base closures before in our state. Most of them were small. This was a big piece of real estate.
It's the size of Walt Disney World, including all of their parks.
And big questions were being asked.
Our congressman at the time, Congressman George Sangmeister, organized a commission, and they worked out their concept of what the arsenal should be.
And Congressman Jerry Weller, who succeeded Sangmeister, helped get the legislation passed.
The Illinois Land Conservation Act of 1995 created the division of property that was ultimately going to be transferred to different entities from the former Joliet Arsenal. So it set forth in law on how that would happen.
The largest portion of land, 19,100 acres, would go to the U.S. Forest Service to create the Medawin National Tallgrass Prairie. The Department of Veterans Affairs would receive close to 1,000 acres for use as a national cemetery. 455 acres would go to Will County for a landfill. And a final portion of land, close to 3,000 acres, would be given to the state of Illinois for economic redevelopment.
The Army had a lot of things that they needed to do to prepare the property for transfer.
First and foremost, the Army was required to address the environmental contamination in two main areas.
One would be in the soils of the arsenal, and second would be the impacted groundwater.
The Army began studying the environmental condition of the Joliet Arsenal in 1978, soon after it was decommissioned.
The early studies looked broadly at where the possibilities that contamination from production activities may have occurred. Subsequent studies went more and more into detail.
By 1989, both the manufacturing and load assemble package areas had been added to the national priority list for cleanup. In 1998, cleanup finally began with the signing of a Record of Decision, a three-way formal agreement between the Army, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the Illinois EPA.
That was the guidance for all of the cleanup. The biggest contaminant group we had was explosives in soil. That mostly occurred during TNT production process in the earlier days. If a batch of TNT was getting out of control for some reason, it would be dumped outside the building for a safety concern.
Bioremediation was used to clean up the soils.
The contaminated soils were excavated, they were hauled to the treatment facility.
Organic material was added to the contaminated soil, causing the high concentration of nitrogen from the TNT to break down.
It's a process that accelerated what might have been a natural process anyway, but something that would have taken decades to achieve, we could do in 21 days on average. That was very innovative and got a lot of attention. It was copied many times following us.
Another environmental concern of TNT production: red water.
In the early operational days of the Joliet Arsenal, people in the community could easily see a stream that was running with a reddish or pinkish color to it.
To address this problem, the Army stopped discharging that red water into the stream and instead put it through an incineration process.
That solved one problem, but it created another, because after incinerating red water, you were left with a white powdery product that was sodium sulfate.
The Prairie View landfill was created in part to provide safe disposal of this sodium sulfate, and it had other benefits.
The addition of the landfill into the concept plan became a win-win for everyone. Certainly for the Army, because we had a landfill to go to at no cost to us. Also for the community, It gave an outlet for their household refuse, and it also produced a revenue stream for the county.
Protecting the water is still a priority at the landfill.
Landfills are built in segments or cells, and as we do that, we have to install additional bottom liner systems. This liner system is utilized to protect the environment and the groundwater beneath it.
Groundwater wells are regularly monitored. So is methane gas.
As waste is placed into the landfill, it begins to decay, and methane is generated by that decomposing waste.
Monitoring ensures that methane gas doesn't escape into the atmosphere. The gas travels through a network of pipes to a single location where it's typically burned on a flare.
However, in this landfill, we're developing a renewable natural gas facility that will actually utilize that gas instead of burning it off.
1, 2, 3. This plant will help fuel the clean energy revolution in Illinois. We are turning our garbage into natural gas, which is good for our environment as well as good for our communities because it is revenue generating without a burden on our taxpayers.
This is a higher use of the gas that will be then taking the impurities out of that gas, pressurizing it so that it can then be put into a pipeline for use as a transportation fuel.
Will County is one of 2 in Illinois that will have a renewable energy plant. This is a wonderful green initiative for Will County.
The most significant economic benefit of the redevelopment came out of the work of the Joliet Arsenal Development Authority, or JADA. Its mission was to facilitate the reuse of 3,000 acres with diversified projects.
Our primary purpose was to create jobs and economic development that were lost when the Joliet Arsenal shut down.
JADA received the first transfer of land in 2000.
I'm so proud of what has become a national model for conversion of former military facilities to peacetime uses.
This development is going to generate a lot of jobs, thousands of construction jobs, union jobs, to help people in the area feed their families and enjoy the American dream.
The plan was to build an intermodal.
The question at that point was, you're going to build an intermodal. Well, what's an intermodal?
An intermodal moves freight from one mode of transportation to another, from rail to truck.
The Arsenal location, that access to freeways, rail connections, and a sizable piece of land was really why that location became such a great spot.
From the beginning, union construction jobs started. Thousands over the first couple of years just to actually build the intermodal rail facilities.
The BNSF Logistics Park opened in 2002, bringing containers from West Coast ports into the Midwest.
That was product that was going to show up in your stores, landing here for the first time in a very dedicated route. The idea was the intermodal would be a huge draw for the warehousing and logistics industry.
Walmart occupied one of the first warehouses.
It was a 3.4 million square foot campus, which is basically 60 football fields under roof, and created over 1,000 jobs.
That was really when people began to understand the economic benefits of locating there near the intermodal.
You could move your product more efficiently, have your distribution center co-located next to the ramp, reducing the truck miles, and so it was a cheaper transportation.
That really created a synergy of bringing additional tenants into the park.
By 2010, demand had increased to support a second intermodal terminal operated by the Union Pacific Railroad, expanding beyond the Arsenal property.
The old cliche, if you build it, they will come, has been proven on Centerpoint.
And it's providing greater economic opportunities for local farmers.
All the empty containers have been largely filled with grain going back.
Now we have containers heading back to West Coast to destinations in Southeast Asia.
Centerpoint, the greater area around the Arsenal, have proven that they are an important engine to the local economy and the national economy.
The Centerpoint Intermodal Facilities is the 4th largest port in the country and the nation's largest inland port.
Will County has been the #1 job creator in Illinois.
we've created 3 times the amount of jobs that were lost at the arsenal.
And we have been the #1 industrial development county in the state of Illinois, in large part because of the Centerpoint Intermodal within the Joliet Arsenal.
But with this growth came challenges.
With 20,000 trucks coming in and out of the intermodal every day, roughly, we were creating issues for roads outside of the park.
The Hobart Road extension and surrounding road improvements grew out of this challenge.
The whole idea there is move trucks in and out of the intermodals more efficiently, less emissions into the air, simpler, safer movements of trucks.
We saw a need. Government came together with labor and private businesses to alleviate some of the issues that our local residents have.
Rebuild Illinois, the $45 billion infrastructure plan passed in 2019, provided funding for road improvements in the area.
Rebuild Illinois is also a vehicle for prosperity for workers and our families.
Rebuilding this infrastructure, that's thousands of jobs.
Jobs for members of Local 150, the International Union of Operating Engineers, a union representing approximately 23,000 men and women.
We are the people that you will see out on your roads and bridges, running the cranes and the bulldozers, the backhoes.
Local 150 acquired 1,000 acres of the former arsenal, of which 300 acres was used to build a training center.
What makes it really unique, especially for this part of the country, is its size.
Not just the sheer size of this building, but the property and all the diversity of equipment that we have as well. Everything should be set up for the different modes, for the different equipment. We have simulators. It allows someone new to our industry to hop in the seat where we're not wasting fuel, sending those emissions into the environment, or damage to equipment because we are new to it. Oh, heavens.
You couldn't really duplicate building a portion of a highway at most training facilities. We can do that right now in our facility.
We would hope that it empowers the worker to confidently and competently pursue their career.
Part of what we do is not just construction, it's also the removing of old facilities. That needed to all be removed before you could even start to build whatever was going to be built out there. Local 150 has been involved in every aspect of this development, this intermodal yard, and then all of the logistics, warehousing, development to go along with that.
Local 150 members are also trained to work within the warehouses.
The skilled labor can only stay skilled as long as it continues to learn, and that's what that facility does.
On the north end of the former arsenal, the Army is honing their skills on 3,500 acres at the Joliet training area.
It's a training area for the Army Reserve. And because we're located in the center of the largest inland port, we get the benefit of all those roads.
Roads within the training area are also an asset.
Training for the soldiers, they're required to do off-road training, on-road training, all types of conditions, all kinds of weathers. We have low river crossing, we have land navigation and map reading.
It's a one-day trip from 60% of the continental United States.
This land is an asset to the Army, mainly because units don't have to travel far. They have a weekend, they have 2 days to fit a lot of training in.
Part of the Army's history is still visible at Medewin, a quarter century after the land was transferred.
There are many buildings still standing out on the property. Things like asbestos, lead, PCBs were all removed, but the structures remain.
Each of the bunkers throughout Medewin, all 392 that we originally had from the Arsenal era, were serviced by railroad. And now it's part of our trail system.
Trails like the Henslow Trail that once carried explosives across the property now offer an opportunity for hiking, biking, and horseback riding.
We have a lot of open ground. The very nature of explosives and manufacturing and assembly of munitions meant that there was a lot of standoff space between all of those buildings. So that land was largely untouched.
And on that untouched land, prairie restoration is well underway.
At the time of the Illinois Land Conservation Act, less than 1% of land in Illinois was prairie.
Illinois once had tens of millions of acres of prairie.
One of the first basic steps of reestablishing prairie is getting seed. And so it was really important for us to establish this native seedbed right here on Medewan.
Volunteers help harvest the seeds.
Generally, we can have up to 100 volunteers that will come out at a time and really help us get this work done.
Medewan has 4 purposes:
restoration, recreation, research and education, and agriculture.
The agricultural mission is met by leasing plots of land to local farmers for row crops.
Soybeans put nitrogen back into the soil and make it fertile enough and rich enough for things to grow. And so the rotation will be corn to soybean, and then time for restoration and prairie planting. It restores the prairie in a natural way. One of the missions is for us to interact with institutions and universities for research purposes.
Recently, we partnered with University of Notre Dame, which looked at a circa 1600 Native American archaeological site, and it gave us tremendous insight into the land itself as we try to restore it to some point in the past before plows and arsenals and roads and things like that.
Water quality is being monitored at Medewan by looking at the biodiversity in the rivers and streams that once flowed red with TNT.
This is a male rusty. It's a Form 1.
Recreation is big, and bison are one of the biggest draws.
Bison were reintroduced to Medewan in 2015, an experiment to help us understand how or if their grazing patterns aid in restoration efforts.
Livestock grazing have a particular ability to leave grasslands in an uneven condition that's desirable to grassland birds for nesting.
Medewan is such a special place because there's just so many birds that you can see out here that you don't see other places in the Chicago area.
Oh, we'll enlarge that. Is that something?
Visitors also have a chance to glimpse the arsenal's history. A bunker is open for viewing, and a statue honors 48 arsenal workers who lost their lives in an explosion at the plant. And the sacrifices of those who served to protect our country will also be long remembered at the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery.
The key component, I believe, that was the big selling point in this whole redevelopment was the idea of the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery.
Congressman George Monster was a big part of getting Abraham Lincoln going. He took it to Illinois, took it to Washington, D.C., made his voice known.
He described to me his vision of having a national cemetery on these grounds. There was a sparkle in his eye. And I told George if he got it built, I'd be there.
He did get it built. And on October 3rd, 1999, the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery was dedicated as the 117th National Cemetery.
Abraham Lincoln established the National Cemetery Administration back during the Civil War. So they thought what a great honor it would be to name the cemetery after him.
When fully developed, the cemetery will provide 400,000 burial spaces. Veterans and their spouses can be interred together, free of charge. But the heart of the cemetery is the care taken to honor the veterans.
We have a Memorial Day ceremony. We have 1,000 volunteers that show up that morning to help us put out flags.
The 2010 Memorial Day ceremony welcomed a special guest.
President Barack Obama came to the National Cemetery to do the Memorial Day service. We had the President of the United States in Elwood, Illinois.
Please rise for military honors.
In recognition of their service and sacrifice, each veteran receives full military honors provided by the Abraham Lincoln Memorial Squad.
Ready, aim, fire. Out of all the national cemeteries nationwide, we're only one of 2 cemeteries that has an on-site honor guard. We have over 170 volunteers that make that group that are very dedicated.
The Memorial Squad performs on average 15 services a day.
We provided a service for a Navy veteran. And in the front row was an 8-year-old child, a little boy, dressed in a Navy uniform. And we were laying his grandfather to rest. And during the service, he stood up in that little Navy uniform, and he saluted his grandfather. And I remember his words. He said, "Grandpa, thank you for making this country safe for me." That moved all of us. And those are the kinds of things that happen here.
Congressman George Sangmeister, who died in 2007, is among the veterans buried here, along with his beloved wife, Doris.
It certainly seems appropriate to me that part of the arsenal that was used to support the warfighter in their mission on the ground is now being used as their final resting place.
The Joliet Arsenal met the needs of a country at war. Now the former Joliet Arsenal is meeting the needs of a country at peace, honoring veterans, developing a skilled workforce, creating an infrastructure for commerce, generating renewable energy, and restoring the prairie to the Prairie State.
Our project at the Joliet Arsenal really became a model for military base redevelopment in the entire country because of our collaboration with all of our different partners.
It has brought jobs, it has brought innovation, and most importantly, it has brought Will County to the forefront.
When the arsenal was there was no tax base. So when it went private, school districts and library districts and villages and municipalities, they're going to see these new tax dollars.
We're here to celebrate the people that made it possible, from the farm families to the construction teams to the current employees that work throughout this area.
I hope that other communities that face this kind of challenge, closure of a plant, the closure of a military facility, will take a look at how we took this adverse challenge and turned it into a real positive opportunity. We're better today that the arsenal is turned into what it is. It's going to serve generations to come through this entire century and beyond.
I would like to, personally thank Jada, Joliet Arsenal. They made today's event possible and others along Route 66. And they've given support to the village for our Route 66 initiative. So it's been a great partnership, and it helps when the former mayor is there, but we've really enjoyed that. So to wrap it up, has everybody here been on 66, like beyond? I mean, of course, right? Has anybody done the whole thing? I know my wife has. I know Paul has. A few folks have done the whole thing. Well, we got some experts here to talk to us about 66 a little bit more, what it means for Lemont and for the region. We have Greg Peerbolt with the Joliet Area Historical Museum. Greg is credited with finding the map, so we could tell us, yay! Look at that, Greg.
As I said, it was a boon for us because it specifically shows the old Joliet prison on that map. I don't know what the big deal was when I found it. Apparently, it's really rare. There were these cards. That was one of a set of across the country. I think there was like 40 or 50. They were like $10 a piece. I should have bought them all because now I can't find them anymore. So, and I also want to point out that newsreel you saw that had the Rialto in the 1930s downtown newsreel that also showed the Illinois Route 4 sign and the Federal Route 66 sign, also acquired from eBay. So,
all right,
don't bid against us for any Joliet thing. We got a whole team of people.
Yeah, so this map is from, what was it? The Automobile Club of Southern California. Later become AAA. Okay. Yeah, and if you're able to see that, it actually counts down the markers to Chicago. So in this map, Wilmington is 0, and Chicago is mile 59 from Wilmington to Chicago, because this is for travelers going the opposite way. But Greg, why does Route 66 start in Chicago, Greg?
Maybe not to answer the question precisely, kind of talking about the Good Roads movement that you brought up. One of my favorite stories as a Kankakeean about the Good Roads movement was Illinois Governor Len Small, who was governor of Illinois for the duration of the 1920s. He was a Kankakee guy. His father made it big enough off rhubarb, and the Kankakee County Museum is currently the site of the family farm. Len went on to become the governor of Illinois, and he was known as the Good Roads Governor. He campaigned heavily on road building. He was later indicted, I kid you not, when it was found out that he was literally and figuratively steering roads through communities that were giving him political and financial support. He was indicted for bribery. He beat it. He was not convicted, but it was said that he had ties to the Capone gang, maybe even the Klan. There was a lot of talk about you could buy off juries during his administration. So at any rate, I don't know, maybe the official reason was, you had construction going on, but interestingly, as we're kind of reviewing maps, Illinois' map did not specifically delineate Route 66 until 1928. Along the route of Archer Avenue was on the map of 66 even as late as 1928. And certainly got SBI before that, for state bond issue 4. And I think 4A at one point was also Archer Avenue. So I guess at the end of the day, Chicago has always been kind of where everything terminates. And in our region, we've always been the way through, particularly in Joliet. So as we saw in the documentary, transportation then as now is a huge part of the industrial heritage. And it all kind of follows that. So it's very much alive and well today.
Great. As a Lemonter, how does that make you feel that 66 is coming through your hometown?
It was pretty cool when we actually found it out, and Greg was researching it, sent it to me. I ended up sending it to Jason, and the Lockport people were happy too. The Lockport mayor was very happy as well, but I think everybody knew it. It's just the problem was you need to prove it up, and the only thing you can do is really get a map or have some records. So it was exciting, and it's something, especially with this 100th anniversary. One of the things we really wanted to do from the arsenal standpoint is part of what we do is tourism, but we really wanted to try to highlight those communities, and we're predominantly in Will County, but obviously Lemont has a little bit of Will County, so we decided to start in Lemont and go all the way to Braden. So it's exciting, and I think you got a chance to see what's available throughout this area. And Jason highlighted many things that we couldn't fit into a video because we had to keep the original video. Actually, it's probably too long. It's about 6 minutes. But we had to get a little flavor for each community in there, so that's what we really tried to do.
And then Art. The Arsenal, amazing. Art was somebody that was there when it was the Arsenal. I've asked you a couple times already today. You've had a lot of titles. What was your last title?
My last title was the Commander's Representative. We didn't have a green suit Army commander. Once we demobilized the production, we moved under the control of civilian staff like myself.
You can tell he was a civilian because he called the green suit Army commander. All right. Of all the things that the Arsenal is today for a 66 fan, as I'm driving down 66, you're passing Medewin National Prairie. I want to just know a little bit more about how it was the first National Prairie, how that all came to be. Whose vision was that to, bring that? Because I think it's a great reason to get on 66 and stop and see some bison.
When the Army finally determined that the capabilities of Joliet would no longer be used, point, there were a few different efforts to plan the reviews, but the one that carried the day was Congressman Sandmeister. He brought in about 24 community representatives from businesses around and different interest groups, and they laid out the 4 primary uses and drew on the map who should get what portions of property, and that was ultimately passed in legislation.
And explain a little bit more. You're pretty modest. You had a pretty large role in keeping all of this together.
A lot of us did, Rick, I'll tell you that. There was a lot of discussion about how things would come together, particularly around what square foot went to what agency. So it took years to get that over the finish line and get it signed. And simultaneously with that, the arsenal grounds had become contaminated to a fair degree. And that all had to be cleaned up before we were allowed to hand over the property for its new uses. We weren't responsible to make it pretty, but we were responsible to hand over property that could be. So we were a good 10 years and $150 million on that project, as well as decommissioning the production facilities and the buildings of the waste materials, the explosives, the hazardous materials. That was another $100 and some million. So it was a big effort to get that property ready to go.
As somebody that works for local government, I could only imagine when you're working with the federal government and the U.S. Army and the force and all the rest, yeah. Significant
Jason,
effort.
I mean, we all didn't all get along in the process. I mean, there were a lot of competing interests between the environmental groups, economic development, municipalities, the county, the Army, and you know, we had a lot of negotiations over time, and everyone realized that we all needed to coexist, and there's enough land out there to really be able to do it. The challenge was how do we get it done so that everybody can move forward at the same time and start getting their projects off the ground. And I think that was one of our biggest challenges, and Art could chime in on this as well. How are we able to do that? Because the Army had to transfer land to each of the entities in order for us to be able to do the work. And it was a big challenge because everybody had different standards, everybody had disagreements about what they were willing to do and not willing to do, and the Army's like, well, you know, we're gonna give you the land for free, so, you know, you can't ask us for too much. So the Army actually ended up cleaning up the environment, but left all the buildings for all of us to deal with, of which was a big challenge, but we were able to be successful in it. And the day when the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, under the Department of Agriculture, is in the process of doing it, but we literally had thousands of buildings on the site. So it was a big challenge.
Headed back to 66, you know, we're grateful to have all of you here at our museum, and this is part of an ongoing series of Fourth Sunday programming. So you could come back to our museum every fourth Sunday for a different program. Where's my friend Pat? Pat's right here, Pat Camillier. She will have the next fourth Sunday program, and that will be in September, and that's the 50th anniversary of the 1976 tornado in Lemont. And so Pat's collecting stories about this tornado. She's collecting images, memories, whatever you may have heard or seen. So make sure you visit with Pat before you leave to share your stories and make sure that your story is a part of her presentation. I also wanted to give Greg an opportunity. The other great museum is the Joliet Area Historical Museum. Hey, it's even good. They don't clap for you like this in Joliet. No. But I wanted to give you an opportunity too. I tried to pull up a couple things, and I could pull up their website as well. If you haven't been down there yet, make sure you do. You saw in the video all the great photo ops and the like that they have happening there. They got Dancing Blues Brothers there as well. I'll mention this, but I'll also let Greg talk about some of the other attractions on 66 that they're managing. They're much more than just that museum. And so, Greg, what else you got going on this summer or all year long?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And Jason mentioned Heritage Corridor Destination. Jason and I have been on the board, I think about the same time, 2017, 2018. And I love Jason because he's just one of these guys that loves where he lives, and he knows all these great bits of culture from Chicago and all the way down to Bureau County, probably beyond that. So we've happily nerded out together on many things, and he's just such a knowledgeable guy who I love doing the nerding out with. So thanks for the invitation, the opportunity to talk about that. But I believe Route 66 is a regional story, and certainly that video highlights it. And the three alignments, if you will, we're in a church, you know, three alignments in one. Route 66 is even a spiritual analogy maybe here in Will County. But you're talking 15 different communities that can claim Route 66 rightfully, in addition to many that touched it. I mean, Route 6, if anyone should be upset, Route 6, the GAR highway that is a true intercontinental highway that was adopted as the same national highway, also having its 100th anniversary. Like, I'm in Shanahan, right? It's not even been mentioned, and we talked about doing like a 666 thing, and people didn't go for that. Yeah, we took that back to marketing, didn't work. So yeah, in addition to the downtown museum in Joliet, you know, the anniversaries for us will continue until morale improves. We're actually celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Joliet Museum, Area Historical Museum, next year in 2027. And at that time in 2002, when we were built, we were really an early adopter of Route 66 tourism. I grew up in Kankakee. My great aunt was a Joliet Franciscan, so we spent a pretty good amount of time in Joliet when I was a kid. And you kind of heard like, there's no way people are coming from all over the world and driving 53. Like that's not really happening. But certainly it is, and still is, and only getting bigger and bigger. So I think many of you know or have heard, and I want to credit my colleague Dale Bowe, who was there in the early days of the Joliet prison when we were kind of commiserating how to reuse things, and he was a great shoulder to cry on sometimes, but also resource about what was happening at the St. Pat's Project with the Joliet prison. So I took a lot of notes from him. So that has been up and running since 2018. We will have a screening of, this is a documentary that's going to air on PBS, and they're doing a road show. I think they stole that idea from you. Going down the whole route and doing some screenings of these movies. But we will have Rick there with this documentary. So Friday, September 4th, come on out for that. And what else we have? We're working in two communities now with the Gemini Giant. I won't go into that story, but it's a fun one, but it's still there. And I can say that we've gotten interest and partnerships from the Ford Motor Company. Harley Davidson is doing something with that. So that was the reason to keep it in Wilmington and in the region. And I'm so glad we did it. They say that every cigarette takes 7 minutes off your life. And I don't know what that one took off my life, but it was worth doing. So Wilmington's a wonderful community. We also have the Arsenal Gatehouse that's been restored on Arsenal Road in Wilmington. And we're working on some programs for that, which I think we'll announce pretty soon. So if you haven't been out there yet, it's okay, but it's a pretty cool experience there. The Joliet Railroad Museum is in the new Gateway Center right across the street from Slammer's Field. So if you're catching the Slammer's game, check that one out. And one I wish got a little more love is the Plant Set Market Museum. This is totally privately funded by the family. A 1926 grocery and meat market that is just off of the old route, right across the street from Rivals Park, which is now on a trails. So yeah, a lot to do. So please, if you have not, it's not just for people coming from England or France or Route 66. We want people locally to come and experience all we have. And the Dairy Queen, thanks for reminding me. So yeah, that was a new one. So we're working with the corporation to kind of figure out phase 2, but in phase 1, we were able to get the facade restored. And from there, I see Tim Michelle right here. Tim, we almost got that. That sign still haunts my dreams, man. I still have pictures of that sign on my phone, and I show people like, if it weren't for that stupid little pandemic, we would have got that. So yeah, JolietMuseum.org. We'll hope to see you Friday the 4th with this movie, and thanks again for the opportunity to talk here. And also thanks to Rick and to Jada for just their support of the Arsenal's history, heritage history. That is our industrial heritage here, I should say. It's important and it's ongoing and probably to a fault. So I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight.
Just one thing I want to mention too is we provided funding to Greg and the museum for a traveling Route 66 exhibit, which he's in process of getting designed right now. So that will be coming probably in the fall, and it will be available basically from Lemont through Braidwood in some kind of schedule. So we'll definitely coordinate with you guys to have it for a period of time.
All right, Lemont, there's more 66 to come. Everybody see, first of all, don't anybody leave yet. Why doesn't everybody just stand up? Because I bet your butts are hard, aren't they? Stand up. Come on, stand up. All right. Let us go. Can you hear us? Okay. You can sit down anytime. He mentioned Dale Bowe, and Dale Bowe is right there. Dale, would you put your hand up? I found out from Susan Donahue back there that Dale is a member, one of the original members of the Lemont Area Historical Society since 1970, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. I want to mention a couple of other things. Normally, we hold these, as Jason said, we hold these programs for free for members, and there's memberships back there, and we charge $5 for 9. However, this is free today because your organization gave us some money, and so that's why this is absolutely free. Another thing I wanted to do is I want to mention to Rick, I believe you helped us get a grant. I'm always trying to get grants. We got a $5,000 grant this year from the Illinois
Landmarks of Illinois.
So, and Rick, it helped us with that. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I think, there's a ton of opportunities for grant dollars. Some of them are very competitive. Some of them are easier than others. Landmarks works very well with organizations like yours. Getting on the map with them and getting even the initial grant is huge because it's something you can apply every year for.
And we want to, because the next thing we want to try to do outside of these windows is plexiglass, which is just so old that we want to replace that. I got a quote in it this year for $19,000. So that would be one of the next things we want to do.
Yeah, you guys are definitely on the map. So.
Yeah. You mentioned that we're doing these fourth Sundays. This is something we did at we had a strategic meeting last December with the board. And I said, we just got to plan more. Everybody's doing such a good job. We've got to plan longer. So we decided that we would do a program the fourth Sunday of every month, except during the summers, at 2 o'clock. So, as you mentioned, Pat Carmelari's going to do one on the tornadoes the next time. And then the time after that, I'm going to do a second one called Stories from the Families of Lemont. And Dale's going to be one of the speakers. What is that? That's going to be, in fact, Tim was on the first one. And what it is we get people that have been to Lemont for 3, 4, 5 generations. We pick 4 families, we have them come up here and they tell their stories. And it was tremendously received. When the mayor was here, he said it was fantastic, so that was great. We also got some things going on with, Tracy's going to be doing some things on spirits of the limestone. And that's, you want to say a word about that? Yeah, why don't you explain that? Just stay seated, because she doesn't like to speak. Go ahead. Say what it is.
We're just doing the histories of haunted histories of Lemont stories from businesses and people's houses. We're going to be doing a downtown walking tour. We're going to be doing ghost investigating. And we're going to be doing sketches of all the stories that we're not doing downtown in old time radio show. Yeah.
So it's it's 3 different functions: a walking tour, a radio show, and also and a ghost investigation. Is there any, as I said, we have a museum downstairs after this is over, and we have to give everybody a tour. Does anybody have any questions?
When everybody is coming
interesting to see that we still have an example of history from an original Potawatomi chief that did pass right near our area. So with Keeping Days coming up, give me a quick plug for them as well.
Kevin is a board member, and he also is doing our newsletter. Say?
Well, everything will be in the newsletter. I can't remember everything.
Well, everything will be in the newsletter, yes, it is. That's another reason why it's good if you join, because you see all the things we're doing. We're really trying to, another thing I would like to introduce is you, and I don't know your name. Bill. Bill is, he represents the Bolingbrook Historical Society, correct? Yes.
Can I make a little comment about this?
Absolutely.
We think,
Here, go ahead.
the North Frontage Road in Bolingbrook,
Wait.
we think possibly the North Frontage Road in Bolingbrook is about 66.
Yeah.
And, I don't mean to sound spoiled sport or anything. Well, it was never mentioned Route 66, so apparently because either it wasn't a town yet, or because we're frauds, we're not on 66.
Yeah, I think, so if you'll notice, we did include Bolingbrook within the, we did include Bolingbrook within the video, because it did actually go through what was now Bolingbrook, but back in the day it was Welco, and I know you guys do have some history of Route 66. We did end up, we're giving $5,000 to the village to help promote Route 66. So I know we're going to be doing that at their board meeting very soon. We did that for each of the municipalities along the corridor so that they could focus some kind of a opportunity to do it. But I know the mayor, they might be playing that the short video, the 6-minute video, and isn't there a festival coming up very soon? So I think that's going to happen. But I'll make sure that you get the information, because we really like to work with the historical societies and so forth, because you guys do all the yeoman's work,
And just to wrap it up, probably as you came in, should have all gotten some of our promotional items about the original route. If you haven't seen it yet, a local artist, Rob Moriarty, painted a Route 66 commemorative bench. It's in our downtown on Main Street, so it faces Route 66. It was an initiative organized by Lockport's mayor, the 100-year road trip, and they'll actually be auctioning off some of the benches that were produced in Lockport. So if you're interested in learning more about that, there's a QR code on this postcard. If you didn't grab one, we have some back there, or ask me or Linda to learn a little bit more about it. But yeah, we'll be hanging out a little bit if you have particular questions. Thanks again for coming out. Hopefully, if you're in Lemont, you're proud to be on 66. So, and then thanks to Greg and Rick and Art for joining us and for their support. So, have a great afternoon. Go get something to eat and drink in downtown Lemont, and maybe I'll see you there.